thesis delivery by the seniors here at Annapolis Christian Academy, the capstone class. Throughout the years, especially those of you who have taken history classes, which at this point should be everybody in the room, you may have noticed that certain technologies become outmoded as new technologies arrive. Very few people plow by hand in the Western world. It would be considered inefficient, perhaps a waste of time. No one grinds their own grain in the Western world because we have factories, we have machinery to do this for us. And one thing that many of you may have suspected in the deep thoughts of your mind is that public speaking has become outmoded and unuseful because of the invention of visual media, the usefulness of fast-paced sound bites, little quips on your Facebook pages, small, pithy sayings that sound clever, yet deliver no substance. You may have replaced the beautiful with the cute, the intelligent with the clever, the factual with the fast. But nevertheless, I would submit to you that public speaking has not become outmoded, but it has become more necessary than ever. For sound bites can't inspire hearts, they can only elicit laughter. The cute is something no one will die for. And the fast, rather than the factual, is something that no one dares base their life on. You would not build a house out of toothpicks if you understood gravity and wind. Today, the seniors will use the facts they have gathered in their research to deliver what I hope to be compelling, beautiful, intelligent speeches to persuade you of something they themselves have become convinced of. Using the pattern of ancient rhetoric, you will see an exordium. They will build rapport with you, the audience. You will see a narratio. They will give you the background information, the narrative, and the definitions necessary to understand their argument. They will state their propositio, which you might have heard called the thesis statement. Then they will give you the probatio, the arguments in favor. They will deliver a refutatio, where they grind into dust and destroy, like the silly, worthless thoughts they are, the ideas that disagree. Finally, they will give a rousing, emotional appeal with moral weight to give you what to do and why you should agree in the end with their thesis. The art of public speaking is more powerful now than it has ever been because the world is filled with silliness. And we need people who can captivate an audience to deliver to them the truth. Without further ado, I invite the junior to introduce the first senior. Would you all be ready to listen? And may you all be encouraged to rise up to this level in the future.
Hello and good afternoon. I am Melissa Wilmot and I am a sophomore here at Annapolis. Today I have the honor of introducing to you my amazing friend Kelsey. I have gotten to know her through basketball these past 2 years and I really enjoy her coaching. She has a fun personality and I look up to her so much. Kelsey has attended Annapolis since her freshman year and she has played every sport except football. She has been accepted to A&M Corpus and A&M Kingsville, though she is not sure which she plans on attending. She plans to pursue a degree in pharmaceutical studies, Lord willing. Her interest in the medical field has led her to choose her thesis topic, stem cell research. Please join me in welcoming Kelsey Thomas.
Close your eyes. Imagine you're blind. Kind of scary not being able to see, isn't it? If there is a way you could fix it, would you? There is a way. It's called stem cell research. The first time I heard about stem cell research was while I was getting a physical for sports. The doctor was not my family doctor, so he did not know much about me. I informed him that I was blind in my right eye. He told me about a current study that may eventually render the knowledge necessary were performing an optic nerve transplant. This kind of transplant would restore my sight. You can open your eyes now, by the way, and turn your attention to my PowerPoint. Any laboratory work done involving stem cells is considered stem cell research. Stem cells are being researched with the hopes of becoming a cure to a multitude of diseases and disabilities such as these. Most of the reactions I heard with regard to the topic of embryonic stem cell research, a specific category of stem cell research, were negative, so I was intrigued to know why. I dove into the subject with no biases to find which point of view was the truth, and I want to convince you that the pro-life advocate's case against embryonic stem cell research provides a valid argument from both pro-life and pro-choice perspectives. This section is about to get a little technical, so bear with me. It is important that you grasp the main idea of these terms to understand how embryonic stem cell research is immoral and why some scientists, doctors, and researchers say that it is perfectly ethical. Stem cells are undifferentiated cells in living organisms that can produce other cells that eventually make up specialized tissues and organs. By undifferentiated, I mean that the cells have not gone through the process by which a cell becomes specialized to perform a specific function. Stem cells are taken in this state because they are easily morphed into whatever cell is desired. These cells are the building blocks of life. Stem cells can be classified as totipotent, multipotent, and unipotent. Totipotent means that it can grow into any type of cell and has the ability to give rise to an entire organism. Pluripotent stem cells are similar to totipotent stem cells in that they can grow into any tissue type, but the difference is they cannot give rise to an entire organism. Multipotent stem cells can give rise to a limited range of cells within a tissue type. This just means that the range of what multipotent stem cells can grow into is limited, and that they provide less potential than totipotent and pluripotent stem cells. Unipotent stem cells are completely differentiated stem cells that can only give rise to a single specialized cell type. There are two different types of stem cells, adult and embryonic. Adult stem cells, also known as somatic stem cells, are classified as multipotent. They are found in numerous parts of the body and are used to replace cells that have died or lost function. It is an undifferentiated cell present in differentiated tissue. It renews itself and can specialize to yield all cell types present in the tissue from which it originated. So far, adult stem cells have been identified from many different tissue types. In more simple terms, this means that adult stem cells can only grow into the cell types that the original stem cell was taken from. For example, stem cells taken from the skin can only produce skin cells. Embryonic stem cells are pluripotent and offer more potential than adult stem cells. This is the reason that embryonic stem cells are more of a focus of research than adult stem cells. They are found specifically in the inner mast of the blastocyst. Remember biology class, when we learned that a blastocyst is not technically an embryo just yet? The blastocyst is a cluster of cells formed from a zygote, earliest stage of an embryo. The cells do not become what is distinguished as an embryo until the cells in the blastocyst differentiate. Also, don't forget that stem cells are undifferentiated cells. The basic life of an embryo goes like this. A fertilized human egg begins as a zygote, grows to a blastocyst, and then the cells in the blastocyst are assigned specific functions to become what we know as an embryo. This is where all the controversy starts. The subject was and remains so controversial that countless hours were spent in court over the Stem Cell Research Enhancement Act, which discusses the morality and legalization of stem cell research. Some doctors and scientists view the process of differentiation, which happens when the cluster of cells has reached the stage of an embryo, to be the beginning of life. Think about this carefully. The beginning of life, from a subjective and scientific point of view, is when this conceived cluster of cells becomes the technical term of embryo. The stem cells used for embryonic stem cell research are taken from blastocyst, which is the stage right before the cluster of cells differentiate and become an embryo. With these facts, many individuals try to justify that taking embryonic stem cells for research is not killing a human being, since the cells are not yet an embryo. Thus, life has not begun. They believe that it is just a collection of cells, like skin cells or any other types of cells in the body. This argument is invalid and ignorant. Diane Irving, PhD, says that recent scientific studies suggest human life begins when the time of a sperm and an egg unite. Ultimately, it does not matter which stage of an embryo's life a person establishes to be the beginning of life, because through the process of taking cells out of the embryo for research ultimately interrupts, terminates, and destroys a potential human's life. This result cannot be avoided with the present embryonic stem cell research method. The Bible implies that life begins at the time of conception. God's plan for us exists even before we are conceived. Jeremiah 1:5 informs us that God knew us before we were conceived. He has a plan for us to be alive and to accomplish a specific purpose in our life. The idea of us exists before we are conceived. An idea is a form of philosophical existence. Some scientists fail to see this, possibly because of their tendency to materialize and want facts. So in this sense, we come into existence before conception. We are a physical being when we are conceived. Psalm 139:13 and 16 says, "Certainly, you made my mind and heart. You wove me together in my mother's womb. Your eyes saw me when I was inside the womb. All the days ordained for me were recorded in your scroll before one of them came into existence." This passage also presents evidence of our existence before birth. Our scientists, doctors, and researchers cannot be expected to be perfect people. Although it would be ideal for them to have perfect morals, they simply do not because of the fallen human nature. They fail to uphold morals in the medical field. Laws governing what the medical authorities are and are not allowed to do are not as direct as they once were, which leaves much more room for error. Medical practitioners in the past would take an oath that upheld morals, ethics, and the overall good conduct of doctors, called the Hippocratic Oath. This oath dated back to 1595, but whether or not authorities in the medical field still abide by the Hippocratic Oath seems questionable. Ralph Crawshaw states, though the medical oath has at times been modified or abridged, it still remains viable for each era, not as an anachronistic tradition, but as a keystone for medical ethics. Julie Bach, MD, PhD candidate, also believes that the oath can be manipulated, but will remain the cornerstone of ethics in the medical field. However, an interview with MD J. Kim, a gastroenterologist, provided insight that those in the medical studies no longer swear by the Hippocratic Oath, or any form of it for that matter. He suggested that the only authorities that uphold the ethics in the medical studies and practices are medical boards located around the globe. The Texas Medical Board substitutes for the Hippocratic Oath in the state of Texas. The problem with the laws of the medical board is that there are so many vague laws that depend on other laws. For example, an act delegated by a physician under this chapter must comply with the other applicable laws. The laws also leave many things up to the judgment of a reasonable and prudent physician. Unfortunately, not all physicians are reasonable and prudent. Researchers, scientists, and doctors fail to uphold morals, particularly with regards to embryonic stem cell research. In the Hippocratic Oath, abortion is explicitly stated to be intolerable. This is not the case in the malleable laws of the Texas Medical Board. It is extremely important to lay down explicit laws on abortion. These laws are necessary when talking about the morality, or lack of, in embryonic stem cell research, because embryonic stem cell research is abortion. Abortion can be defined as terminating defenseless human life that is still in the mother's womb, given that the human life begins at the point of conception. Since embryonic stem cells are taken from the inner mass of blastocyst, the process of forming a human life is terminated. This is abortion, and abortion is immoral. Exodus 21:22-25 takes extreme measures when dealing with the harm of a mother or a child in her womb. It states, if men fight and hit a pregnant woman and her child is born prematurely, but there is no serious injury, he will surely be punished in accordance with what the woman's husband demands of him, and he will pay what the court decides. But if there is serious injury, then you will give a life for a life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. The Bible may not explicitly say abortion is immoral. However, the severity of this passage implies that it is. The different views on abortion are classified into two groups, pro-choice and pro-life. Pro-choice is a group of advocates who encourage the idea of giving women a choice to have an abortion. This suggests that it is the women who are in charge of their body, and the baby inside of them are not yet a baby. It's just a thing inside of them. She feels that it's either taking care of her or the baby. She puts herself first. As Christians know, we are not our own. Our body and everything inside of it does not belong to us. Our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit and should be treated as such. Pro-life, for the purpose of this paper, is strictly the group of advocates who oppose the idea of abortion. They believe in advocating the full legal protection of embryos and fetuses. Due to extensive research and the incorporation of personal Christian views, I fall into the pro-life category. Under no circumstance should any form of human life be murdered. Not only is embryonic stem cell research immoral, it is also ineffective. Research done by Marie Godfrey, PhD, suggests that to his knowledge, embryonic stem cells have not successfully cured any form of disease or condition. The first successful culturing of human embryonic stem cells was done in a laboratory in 1998. 15 years have gone by, and not one success story has been told about embryonic stem cell treatments. A contributing factor to the non-existent success rate of embryonic stem cell transplants is that they come with the danger of bodily rejection. Since embryonic stem cells have the DNA from a different human being, the body of the recipient registers the cells as foreign, which triggers an immune attack on the cells. The transplants can also result in the recipient developing cancer as well. There are alternative research methods that have the same potential as embryonic stem cells and have proven successful. One type of alternative research method uses induced pluripotent cells, iPS cells. These are differentiated, mature adult cells that undergo a regenerative process, which restore the cells back to their pluripotent stage in a lab. iPS cells do present problems, however. They have a potential to die more quickly than embryonic stem cells. This death is called apoptosis. This problem is similar to rejection. The body is getting rid of what is not needed and what could potentially be dangerous. Even though there is this possibility of a problem, iPS cells do not present any morality issues and have proven to be successful. The first mouse iPS cells were created in 2006, followed by the first human iPS cells in 2007. There have already been successful cures to diseases by iPS cells, such as the curing of end-stage renal disease in 2011. This disease would normally require a kidney transplant for the patient. There is a high demand for organs and a lack of donors, so scientists used their knowledge of iPS cells instead, and the result was successful. Another alternative, called morphoangiogenesis, MA, produces stem cells in vivo in adult. In vivo means that it takes place inside the living organism as opposed to in vitro, which means it takes place in a lab dish. MA produces two structures capable of generating the stem cells. These include tissue and organ formation using stem cells produced by MA, and the obstruction of neurovascularization of cancers by MA's ability to form structures which would obstruct nutritive vessels and thereby starve tumors. This process has proven to successfully produce cartilage for the purpose of healing arthritis. Pro-life advocates are often viewed as biased and ignorant. This is sometimes true, but the members who are educated present a valid case against embryonic stem cell research. They address the immorality of the process, which convinces the other pro-life advocates not to promote the practice. They then proceed to address the ineffectiveness of the practice, which should convince the pro-choice advocates not to promote the practice. However, doctors and researchers continue to see the need in furthering our knowledge in embryonic stem cell research. A doctor of the International Center for Spinal Cord Injury at the Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore, named John McDonald, expressed his optimism in 2010 about embryonic stem cell research on an online article. He is conducting a study on individuals with thoracic spinal cord injuries to treat the injuries with embryonic stem cell injections in a safety trial. The cellular injections were FDA approved. After reading this article, I found that his optimism does not lie in the success of the embryonic stem cell transplants, but rather in the technology of the transplants of the embryonic stem cells, meaning he cares more about advancing the study than the efficient use of the cells in the transplants and curing patients. Shouldn't that concern us? Unfortunately, embryonic stem cell research continues, and as you can see, not everyone is convinced that the technology is not worth all the hassle. One of my biggest fears lies in the supplying process of embryonic stem cells to research laboratories. Researchers get their embryonic stem cells for studies from fertilization clinics. They get the leftovers. Eventually, they may start saving extra leftovers and then ordering extra embryonic stem cells specifically for the researchers, as the idea of embryonic stem cell research becomes more accepted. Man has the natures of justifying and rounding off. These two natures combined lead to the acceptance of unthinkable things. As Harrison Ross puts it, the unthinkable becomes horrible, horrible becomes controversial, controversial becomes not acceptable acceptable becomes not normal, and not normal becomes normal. This is similar to the situation of gay marriage. The idea was unthinkable in the past, but now many are fighting for the legalization and acceptance of it. We cannot stand by and watch as embryonic stem cell research progresses. Let's be honest, most of us do not have any connections to who controls what is going on in the medical studies. There aren't any huge changes we can make to govern the studies conducted. So what we as Christians should do is continue praying for our scientists, researchers, and doctors. We should avoid promoting the use of embryonic stem cell treatments and encourage the search for and advancing of alternative methods. Proverbs 31, 8-9 tells us to speak for those who can't speak for themselves, which in this case would mean that Christians need to stand up for the human beings being killed without their consent. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Verge.
Hello. Hello.
It's gonna blow.
No?
You're okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Watch it carefully.
Can you hear me, Kelsey?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Let me be really ignorant. Is there any way to harvest an embryonic cell without killing where it came from? I mean, is it
No,
always
because
abortion?
An embryo is an embryo.
Okay. So if you take any of the cells, then it's going to, because it's so small, it's going to die?
Yes.
Okay. And at the end, you said that there's really kind of nothing that we can do except pray, which is like, I shouldn't say except pray, that's a big thing. Is there anything else that we can do? Or, did you find anybody who was actively standing up against this? I mean, what can we do?
We can vote against pro-choice leaders in our country, and we could join. I mean, I haven't looked up any specific clubs, but there are many members that are actively against pro-choice. Pro-choice. I can't think of the word, sorry.
Kelsey, I congratulate you. You must be elated that it's almost over.
Yes.
Just a few questions. I thought your topic was really interesting, and
Thank you.
I've done some research on it, but you presented a lot of information that I hadn't heard, and so you kind of have a blank slate with me to shape my opinion on this issue. I am totally against abortion. Believe it is immoral. And so my question is really going to what I would consider the heart of your argument, which is this a human life? This blastocyst, it's been a long time since I took freshman biology.
Yeah.
So I need to rely on the research and expertise that you've had here. Is that, okay, so help me with the process. Just explain that process to me from fertilization to embryo, and convince me that the blastocyst tissue cells are in fact a human life, as we would think about a human life.
Okay. I'm not sure if Mr. Smith could pull up my slide that shows that, but I can't really convince you when human life begins, because the Bible doesn't tell us when human life begins. You agree on that, right?
The Bible doesn't get specific about the biology,
Right.
but can science tell us when human life begins?
Science can't tell us when a soul enters an embryo, but we do know that a sperm goes into an egg, and then it becomes what is called a corolla, and then it goes to a blastocyst, and then those cells, they turn into an embryo. And that's what many scientists consider the beginning of life.
The embryo, or the cells that turn into the embryo?
The embryo.
Okay.
But there have been more scientists nowadays. I can't remember the specific name, but I mentioned one in my speech that said, I think it was Julie Bach, but she said that more scientists now are saying when a sperm and an egg unite, that's when life begins.
Okay, so the point of fertilization then of an egg would be
Life.
the beginning. Okay, it is. You mentioned the words you used in your speech were very. I'm going to kind of pick them apart here for a second. Very technical here. Very specific. You said it is the beginning of the process.
Yes.
Of a human life.
Right.
Okay, so the beginning of a process is not necessarily the beginning of an actual human life. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is, could a case be made that, this is a form of birth control? You are preventing a life from forming, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not terminating a life. Do you see the difference?
Well, the life process has already begun. In birth control, the life hasn't begun. I was afraid we would get to here, so I talked it over with one of my teachers, actually.
Right.
There's a difference between preventing a life and stopping a life.
I agree.
In abortion, a life process has already begun, and that's murder if you cut off that process. But with birth control, the life process, it hasn't started. And
In
I
that
think there's a difference.
blastocyst phase, do you know the details of, does that have and contain all the DNA that it would require for a full human being to form?
A blastocyst?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good job withstanding Mr. Hansen's pressure. Did you come across any research that indicated why a secular scientist might be convinced that that blastocyst is in fact part of that human life process? Because it seems to me that, you know, the arguments that you put together are primarily drawing on scripture, and so I certainly support that perspective, but there would be plenty of people who wouldn't. And so I'm interested if you've been able to learn anything about what scientists in the secular world argue about when they're debating when human life actually begins.
They say that because it's a cluster of cells in the blastocyst, and in an embryo, that's when the human, like the body starts forming. So that's when they say it's alive. Like in the beginning, in the blastocyst, that's just the cells, so it's not really what we look at and see as a human, if that makes sense.
It does. So I guess what I'm asking is, how would a secular scientist who doesn't hold the authority of Scripture as authoritative, how might they be convinced that that cluster of cells is human life?
That's a good question.
I mean, I guess I'm asking, did you come across any sense of why these scientists are voicing the opinions that they have, or is it just a bunch of grown men who, in fact, are greedy for scientific advancement, and so they're interpreting what they see the way they want to see it? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I know they do it because it's cheaper to do embryonic stem cell research than a lot of the other methods. It's already FDA approved in some states. And they already have so much research done on it, it's easier to advance it. Like the guy that I mentioned that's doing the research, he's doing it because he's using it to get more knowledge of the research for other technologies rather than curing patients. I don't know if that's your
No, thank you. That's helpful. Another question I have, you've suggested that even people who are pro-choice should still fall into the anti-embryonic stem cell research umbrella. Clarify again to me, just summarize briefly why that's true.
Two main points is because one is immoral, and that's mainly for the pro-life advocates, why they should be convinced, and because it's ineffective, which should convince the pro-choice advocates.
And you mentioned one body of work or one study that showed the ineffectiveness of embryonic. How thoroughly did you look around? I mean, do you think that if I looked?
I looked all
You
over.
couldn't find any statistics or something?
Couldn't find any.
Okay, thank you.
What, in your research, I'm just curious about the broader legal question of this. What is currently going on with embryonic stem cells? I know there was, for instance, I'm thinking back during the Bush administration years, I remember him allowing research to be conducted on a certain stream of embryonic stem cells that had been obtained already and but then he froze the others, right? Any research on the others. So I'm just curious what's evolved. That was really the last I heard of what's going on.
That was the Research Enhancement Act, which I mentioned. I took out some big chunk of that because I didn't have time to mention it. But Obama opened, I think, 27 lines. Okay. I'm not exactly sure of the number, but he allowed more room for research to be done on embryonic stem cells. So.
Okay. And largely these are stem cells that are obtained through in vitro fertilization processes. Is that correct? That these are, test tube, in other words, they put a sperm and an egg in a test tube, they let it do its thing, and then they harvest what comes out of that test tube. Is that right?
I'm not quite sure.
I think you are right.
Thank you.
If at some point in the future scientists were able to develop a method of extracting stem cells without harming is it the embryo that's harvested or the blastocyte that's harvested?
The blastocyte is what holds the cells.
Okay. So if at some point in the future stem cells were able to be extracted from the blastocyte without destroying it or in some way harming it, do you think that changes the equation?
Well, they can take stem cells from many other places in the body. Did I make that? I'm not sure if I made that clear. So they only take them from the embryos because they offer the most potential. They're supposed to, at least, even though we haven't had any cures with it. But I think if it didn't present any morality issues, it would change the equation.
The other interesting facet here, I'm not sure if your research went in this direction or not, but we're potentially getting into the buying and selling of human life here because of the nature of a lab having a product that someone else wants, and if you've got competition for it that's in our culture and in our economic society, that's going to generate a demand and a price for it. So do you have any thoughts on those issues?
Obviously, I think it's completely wrong to buy and sell a human. I'm against the idea of selling humans. But I don't.
Well, let's turn it over to the audience. That was a big task to do, and I think we were able to follow what you were saying very clearly. So that was well done.
First, Kelsey, a question from the peanut gallery, and then we'll get to the serious questioners.
Okay.
You mentioned that human life, you said that these blastocysts are potential human life. Why is it wrong to take a potential human life? For instance, why should I care if it might be a person? Whenever it might be not a person, then I just hey, free cells. That sounds funny, but it's a serious,
Right.
What if I'm dealing with a situation and
Well, if you were hunting and you saw what looked like a deer, but it also looked like a human, would you shoot it?
well,
I think that for a while, at least during the Bush administration, that if people were doing stem cell research, the government was not funding it, but they could have private funds. Do you know if that's changed? Is the
Can you say
government
that one
funding
more
it?
time?
Back under the Bush administration, I believe, the government would not fund embryo stem cell research, but they could have it funded privately.
Right.
Do you know if that's changed, if the government is now funding embryonic stem cell research?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw an example out here. So if a 14-year-old girl gets sexually assaulted and becomes pregnant, do you think it is moral or immoral to terminate the baby?
Immoral.
any other questions? Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you,
Losing German. My name is Aaron Weller, and I have the honor of introducing Ernest-Reed. This young man has been at Annapolis for the past 5 years, and he plans on attending Texas A&M Corpus Christi for 1 year, then transferring to either Baylor University or TCU. There he will major in biology and or chemistry, possibly with a minor in music, since he's a very talented pianist. His presentation will be on how music affects the morals of an adolescent. So please welcome Ernest-Reed.
So what we get drunk? So what we smoke weed? We're just having fun and we don't care who sees. So what we go out? That is how it's supposed to be. Living young, wild, and free. Many of you have heard this song and sung along due to its catchy tune. However, now that you hear the lyrics, you can clearly recognize the message it promotes. That binge drinking, smoking, and partying is an ideal lifestyle which should be the center of one's life. Despite it encouraging sinful behavior, it remains one of the most popular songs of 2012. Young, Wild, and Free stands as the number 30 song of 2012 and has sold over 3.2 million digital copies. These statistics show how many music consumers are exposed to the message that this song promotes. Overall, this song may please the ear, but the message it portrays does not aid in one's moral development in Christ. Instead, its central interest focuses on satisfying one's sinful desires. Now, I do admit that not all songs contain messages, such as the ones from Young, Wild, and Free. However, a majority of the current popular songs promote messages related to, if not identical to this one. Furthermore, what exactly is popular music? Before defining popular music, I must define the term music. Music is the art of combining instrumental and or vocal sounds, which serves as an auditory medium that expresses and encourages virtues as well as vices. Popular music is music listed on the Billboard Hot 100 within the past 10 years. Since music is able to encourage virtues and vices, then what is today's popular music encouraging? According to the song I quoted, popular music not only glorifies sin, but makes it appropriate among adolescents. This illusion affects adolescents in several areas of their life, including their morality. The fact that the mind and body of adolescents are still developing suggests that they are not yet capable of making critical decisions, including the type of music they listen to. An adolescent is a development stage in which a child becomes an adult, specifically a person within the 12 to 20 age group, which is most of you here. I am focusing on adolescents due to their easily persuaded character and lack of discernment, which will be discussed later. Adolescents are most vulnerable to the influence music has on their morality. Dallas Willard defines morality as the study of the goods of human life and the habits, attitudes, and actions which incline towards those goods. Moreover, Christian morality would then consist of the habits, attitudes, and actions that incline toward the goods of human life in relation to God and His teachings. According to this definition of Christian morality, could one say that popular music today reflects God or His teachings? Didn't think so. Popular music may have a great beat and rhythm. However, it does not aid in our moral development with Christ. With this being said, it is evident that music influences the person as a whole, including his morality, and that most of the current popular music negatively affects the morality of adolescents. The concern of music's negative influence on society is nothing recent. The philosopher Plato discusses his concern and view on music in his books The Republic and Laws. According to David Carr, Plato's view on music, in the narrow rather than the broader sense, is a kind of ordered effective charge auditory experience, that some forms of musical order are more conducive to the harmony or balance of the soul than others, and that a healthy human soul or character should in some way reflect the harmony of appropriate or approved forms of music. In other words, Plato perceived music as an auditory medium which affects and reveals the morality of the listener. He knew the power and influence of music, and he had a specific concern for the young adults and children of society who were exposed to music. He predicted that music could nourish or corrupt the malleable minds of the innocent, and I quote, "If music can be used to produce great good, it can also participate in the corruption of cities and souls." In attempting to solve this issue, Plato devised two solutions. The first being the severe censorship of music in society, and the second being an established music education system for young children and adolescents. Although Plato's focus was on educating and censoring music, could his hypothesis be true that music influences and shapes one's morality? This remains a difficult topic that consists of various views. However, I will present the view that the mind, body, and soul are a unified whole. Dallas Willard, a well-renowned Christian philosopher, and C.S. Lewis both state that the person is a soul, not a body. Willard describes the soul as the dimension of the person that interrelates all of the other dimensions so that they form one life. In other words, the soul encompasses the whole person. It connects all of the aspects of a person and works like a computer system. It manages a company's business or manufacturing system and ensures the proper function of other systems. These other systems are the mind, the body, the social, and the spirit being comprised of the heart and will. Although these are all different aspects of a person, they are never to be spoken apart from each other, but just with different emphases. The soul connects these dimensions of a person with the spirit being at one's core. The spirit not only serves as an individual identity of a person, or the medium between God and man, but also as the force that originates motivation and choices. Whatever perturbs our spirit will affect our motivation and choices, and therefore affect our attitudes, habits, and actions, which is one's morality. This is why Willard states that the spirit is primarily what must be given a godly nature. Without the proper foundation of the spirit, the spiritual and moral formation of a person will easily lean to that which affects them, including music. Notice that the mind and body are two of the aspects listed that comprise a person. These aspects are scientifically proven to be affected by music. In fact, there is a current growing practice dedicated to this field of research. This practice is musical therapy. Musical therapy is an established health profession in which music is used in a therapeutic relationship to address physical, emotional, cognitive, and social needs of individuals. According to studies performed by the American Musical Therapy Association, schizophrenic patients who were exposed to music exhibited less symptoms of agitation and overall experienced a calmer behavior. This study not only proves that music impacts the mind and body, but also that it impacts one's behavior. In summing up this argument, I would like to highlight some paramount points. First, recognize that a person is a soul, not a body. The soul is comprised of several aspects of a person, including the mind, body, and spirit. And anything that influences the soul also influences the remaining aspects of a person. Second, understand that the mind and body are scientifically proven to be affected by music. Therefore, since music affects the mind and body, it consequently affects the soul. Finally, recognize that the spirit is the core of a person and origin of our choices. If the spirit is affected, then our morality, being our habits, attitudes, and actions, are affected as well. Since the soul encompasses the whole person, including the spirit, music then affects our morality, our spirit, which consequently affects our morality. When our morality is affected by any force of nature, it will in return affect the multiple aspects of a person, including one's choices and will. Now that that's out of the way with, let's discuss the prevalence of popular music in adolescents' lives. Although many would argue that television mostly dominates adolescents' media consumption, studies performed by professors at Stanford University proved otherwise. A survey of junior high and high school students were asked what form of media they would take with them if they were stranded on a desert island. Out of all the students, over 80% chose music as one of their top 3 choices. Keep in mind that this study was done before the invention of the iPod. Since the invention of the iPod, 95% of adolescents own a personal music device in which they consume roughly 3 hours of music a day. This being said, it is obvious that music is even a higher desired and prevalent form of media today than 15 years ago. The reasons why adolescents prefer music than any other media
is because of music's ability to connect with an adolescent's soul. Adolescents stated that music is a relatable form of media, which aids in comforting or releasing their emotions. Now, what popular genres of music do adolescents listen to which aids in this control of their emotions? Although the information of the most popular genres of music varies, there is a general consensus for the top 4 genres of music. According to Billboard and Nielsen Company, the rock genre dominates the competition with the most sold and exposed music. The runner-up being pop, followed by hip-hop and rap, and then country. These 4 genres have been and remain the dominant genres of music for the past decade. Furthermore, adolescents are the biggest age group that is attracted to these genres of music. Nielsen Company, which is a company that measures the amount of media intake from consumers, show that the teenage age group is one of the biggest age groups to watch and or buy music. This study showed that adolescents are 30% responsible for all the music purchases in 2008. Overall, these statistics and studies reveal the prevalence of music and vital role music plays in an adolescent's life. Music is a highly desired form of media in which many messages are exposed in this music and are capable of influencing and affecting one's morality. This leads me to my next point, which is the lyrics of popular music. The lyrics of a song have the capability to persuade one's way of thought. Musicologist David Tame stated, "Music is more than a language. It is a language of languages. It can be said that of all the arts, there is none other that more powerfully moves and changes consciousness." In other words, music is a more powerful medium to influence one's character than words. Now think about it. If the use of language is powerful enough to persuade a country that the extermination of Jews will benefit the world, then what are the lyrics of music capable of doing to an adolescent's morality? Unfortunately, considering that most lyrical content in popular music contains many substance and sexual references, it isn't a good thing. In 2005, studies performed by several professors from the University of Pittsburgh calculated the percent of sexual and substance references in popular songs. The results were anything but surprising. They discovered that out of the 280 most popular songs, 35% positively referenced binge drinking, drug consumption, or both, and 40% positively illustrated sexual activity. In addition, the context of these songs linked positive outcomes with the consumption of substance use and or premarital sex. However, these songs were so 7 years ago. Let's examine several of the recent popular songs and what they glorify. The song Glad You Came by The Wanted stands as the #6 song of 2012 according to Billboard. Despite its popularity, the message it describes does not reflect Christian morals. This song illustrates how a one-night stand can dramatically transform one's universe. Furthermore, it portrays women as nothing more than sex objects. Another song that won a Grammy was We Are Young by Fun. At the very beginning of the song, the artist depicts his friends getting higher in the Empire State. Then, he explains to his ex-girlfriend that if she's too drunk to walk home, not to worry, because he will carry her home. The lyrics to these songs give a clear image as to what they are promoting. These songs encourage premarital sex, binge drinking, partying, and drug abuse, none of which God tells Christians to focus on. Philippians 4:8 states, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." I fail to see how getting drunk, doing drugs, and having premarital sex fits under the doctrines of God, and yet, music that encourages these actions are most listened by adolescents. Now let's do a quick rewind. Since music is just as if not a more powerful medium than words, it can be safe to say that music influences a person's actions, as well as their attitudes and habits. Referring back to my explanation of the mind, body, and soul, Willard states that the spirit is comprised of one's choices and will. He goes on to say that anything that affects the spirit consequently affects all the aspects of a soul. Since this is true, couldn't it be safe to say that the music one listens to affects their actions as well? A study performed by Dr. Rutger Engels from Radboud University helped solve this issue. He experimented on the amount of alcohol consumption from various people according to the types of music they listened to. The results revealed that significantly more alcohol beverages were purchased when music that referenced alcohol was played, rather than music that did not reference alcohol. Referring back to my thesis, this experiment reveals the power music has on the choices of the listener. Over time, music can impact one's morals according to the type of music they listen to. Since popular music influences actions that do not glorify God in any way, these influences are in effect negative. Although the evidence supporting my case is clear, there are several arguments that challenge my claims. However, only one of these arguments will be mentioned. These arguments propose that music will only affect one's morality if one allows it to. This person chooses what will affect their morals and what won't. For example, if an adolescent decides music won't affect them, then it won't. However, saying that music won't affect you if you won't allow it to is like saying you won't get secondhand smoke if you're around an avid smoker 24/7. It is not possible. Like proved earlier, music is an extremely prevalent form of media in society. One does not simply hold the power to decide what they want to affect them and what won't. Furthermore, the minds and bodies of an adolescent are still developing, and therefore, they lack the proper discernment to make critical choices in their life. Dr. Francis Jensen proved something that parents knew for years. That adolescents' brains are not fully developed, even from the ages of 18 to 21, and therefore they are less capable in making critical decisions in their life. Therefore, they are not fully capable of choosing what music should and shouldn't be in their lives. They do not fully understand the dramatic impact music has on their life. However, it all falls down to their ability to discern right from wrong. As a final vivid point, I would like to leave with one more personal illustration. This illustration is partly the reason why I chose this topic. For the past 2 years, I have had the opportunity to babysit a young boy from my church. In first meeting him, I immediately realized his rebellious behavior and pursuit for attention. He would curse worse than any other person I had met. He would discuss how cool it was to get drunk and smoke weed, in which he would pretend to use twigs as cigarettes. And he would talk about women in a perverted manner, especially for the young age of 12. I knew for a fact that his parents and siblings were not contributing factors to his behavior, and I became curious as to why he believed these things were cool. Therefore, I confronted him and asked where he learned all these curse words, and why did he think smoking and drinking were cool? His answer was one word: music. I knew right then and there that the music he listened to had a dramatic impact on his morals, in which he believed that through cursing and exalting substance use, he would become cool among his peers. The evidence I presented undoubtedly reveals the popularity and influence music has on an adolescent's life, as well as its ability to negatively influence an adolescent's morals. The influence music is capable of is undeniable. In Mark 4:24, God specifically tells Christians to be cautious of what they hear. Then he added, pay close attention to what you hear. The closer you listen, the more understanding you will be given, and you will receive even more. Therefore, I would like to issue 2 calls to action. First, a music education for adolescents and young children. Just like Plato believed, a music education would inform adolescents about the true powers of music and the ability it has to influence morals. In educating these adolescents, I propose that teachers and parents explain what music is aesthetic and to ask the question, does this music glorify God? Hopefully, if the child was raised with a Christian foundation, they will be able to identify that current popular music does not reflect or glorify God. Lastly, I suggest a conviction of the heart. Like Mr. Ross said, the convicted heart is the beginning of change. This means that if the heart is convicted, then change will spark in a person. In this instance, if we can convict the hearts of a person who listens to popular music, then hopefully they will be able to discern what they should and should not listen to. The power of music clearly is able to influence and corrupt morals, just like Plato said centuries ago. In closing my thesis, I would like to end on one final quote from Ludwig van Beethoven, in which he said, music can change the world, and change the world it has. Thank you.
And recognize that music has had some influence on their lives, and certainly if they don't, hopefully the evidence that you've laid out will resonate with them and stick with them. My question for you is, how has your research impacted your own life?
My research has significantly impacted my own life. In fact, I used to listen to this music primarily, and another reason why I chose to do this topic was because I saw the way that it influenced me. I saw the way I would change, how my character changed, how my morals would change, how things that were once unthinkable to me became normal. And I therefore decided that that music really does have a significant influence on a person. Just like whenever I play the piano, I've been told several times by people that I've had that whenever I play, I influence them, I change their state of mind, and it brings them to a certain emotion depending on the song that I play. And so I firmly believe that the research that I have done and what I have come up with has impacted my life, in which I now can discern what music I should and should not listen to.
Your arguments are powerful, and I'd like to press you a little bit more on some of the specifics and the direction that I'd like my questioning to go is along this question of sort of what's okay and what's not. You know, how far is too far in the world of what I listen to? Do you agree, first of all, that even music without lyrics can have that impact on people? Or do you think it's only lyrics that impact people?
Well, think about it like this. If you were to listen to heavy metal music even without the lyrics, are you going to be calm? Or are you going to get really, pumped up? And if you listen to music like classical music from Beethoven or Chopin, it's most likely not going to get you aggressive. Plus, there's been studies that shown that the types of music preferences correlates to certain behaviors, especially in adolescence.
So given that, are there certain kinds of music, even apart from lyrics, that we should have as part of our honor code, part of our student statement of conduct of what they sign to, saying, I will not listen to such and such music? I mean, what's the takeaway here? Because I guess what I'm asking is heavy metal music without lyrics ever okay? Is it okay to get pumped up listening to heavy metal music, or is that dangerous?
It can be dangerous in a way if that's all you ever listen to. But if it's occasional and you're able to discern that this music does not, in a way, reflect God, unless, for example, it has certain lyrics in it, then I believe that it will... I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Well, you're going in the right direction, I think. I'm wanting to know if it's acceptable. You referenced heavy metal music as something that stirs up aggression.
Yes.
Should we allow our children, should we allow our students to listen to heavy metal music?
That all depends on their personal preference and what their parents think. If their parents raised them in a Christian standard, then I believe whatever their parents believe is right or wrong, and whatever God believes is right or wrong in that standard, then that's what we should and should not listen to.
Do you think parents ever make poor choices about what music they allow their children to listen to?
Yes, some parents do. Therefore, it all falls on the student. And if they have a convicted heart in which they're compelled what music glorifies God and what music doesn't, then hopefully they'll be able to discern what they should listen to.
So is music that stirs up aggression automatically unglorifying to God, or is there some other line there that has to be crossed? I mean, the Lord himself demonstrates anger throughout the Bible. Help parse for me maybe the difference between unhealthy aggression and is there such a thing as healthy aggression?
I believe there's such a thing as righteous anger, but music only affects like Plato said, music really only affects the morals that the people already have. And in the same way, the morals that we have will determine the music we listen to. So, determining the morals of the person, and then follows whether or not heavy metal music is good or bad.
Do you have any recommendations to your peer group, since they're all gathered here before you, in terms of what music they should evaluate whether or not they should delete from their iPods?
Any music that glorifies God in any way, I believe is acceptable. Any music that encourages drinking, smoking, partying, premarital sex, why would you want to listen to that? Or music that encourages a certain lifestyle, which God specifically tells you not to live by.
Well, thank you, Ernest. I just have one final question. I'm interested to know, you've got a lot of discussion of morality here. Are you familiar at all with the psychologist Kohlberg and his theory of moral development?
A little bit, yes, sir.
Can you speak at all to whether or not Kohlberg's theory of moral development has any bearing on this topic?
Well, according to Kohlberg, there's 3 certain levels of moral development. The first is pre-conventional, the second conventional, and the third post-conventional. And adolescents typically fall under the conventional moral development. And this is the moral development in which, is everybody doing this? Should I do it? Should I not do it? It's kind of a bandwagon fallacy. And so most teenagers today do fall under that. And unless they're able to discern or think whether or not music is good or bad, that if, okay, everybody's listening to this, then I'll listen to it too. Or their mindset is set on, this is breaking the rules, this is not according to what God says or how I should live. And that's the mentality, I guess, according to Cochlear, that teenagers will fall under.
So in other words, because teenagers are, according to Kohlberg, susceptible to their peer group, the gauntlet has been laid out, if you will, to this audience to make their own decisions and stand up for what they believe and not simply follow what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Great topic. Personally resonates with me. Can relate to much of what you're talking about. If I look back on my life, I can see soundtracks to various stages of my development, my attitudes, my actions. And I was one of those kids that was not like most of the kids in here. I was a very rebellious teenager. And it was fueled, I can tell you. I'm self-conscious about it. I was fueled tremendously by the music that I was listening to at the time. A lot of heavy metal, punk rock, a lot of stuff like that, alternative stuff, and it was not godly, it was not promoting things. So I mean, I can relate to exactly, I've lived what your thesis is in many ways. I just have a couple of questions here. Is it sinful to listen to pop and rock and secular music? Is it sinful?
It is, listening to it, in my opinion, is not sinful. Doing it is.
But it might not be wise, is what you're saying.
Yes.
And so while it might not, there's not a, 11th commandment, thou shalt not listen to, popular music. The Bible does exhort us to use wisdom in discernment in what we listen to, and we would say that would fall in the category of not wise, right? Am I characterizing?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a parent. I got 4 kids, and they all listen to music, and my oldest 2 have iPods. What are things that parents can do? I mean, what you've given a lot of us is a wake-up call, I think, because I think you're right. A lot of parents are just asleep at the wheel when it comes to the music their kids listen to, and the damage being done. So what can parents do to help, to manage things better?
Well, God put parents in a position of authority over their children. So I believe whether the child likes it or not, the parents should be able to see what music they're downloading and what music they're listening to. And downloading music is extremely easy nowadays. even without the parents' consent, the child can just go and say, okay, I want to buy this explicit song. But parents should take the initiative to monitor what their children are listening to, and if they see something on their iPod or phone that they themselves do not approve of, then I would suggest they delete it and then explain to their child why this is wrong.
Good. And could you tell me a little bit more about the music education that you're promoting as a way of helping youth make wise choices about this? What if we were to offer? We do offer music education. But what advice might you have for our school leadership about helping with this issue?
At first, I would say to present what music is aesthetically beautiful and what music glorifies God. Show them what music is true, good, and beautiful. And then from an unbiased perspective, show them this is what popular music glorifies. And hopefully, the child themselves will be able to discern what they should and should not listen to. Because if you tell a child, you cannot listen to this is bad, they're not going to listen. Just like whenever you tell a kid, don't put your hand on the stove because it's hot, they're going to do it. So, I think that if we're able to present what is beautiful and what is good music from an unbiased perspective, and then translate that into what popular music glorifies. This is what popular music shows. It encourages premarital sex, it encourages getting drunk, doing drugs. How is that beautiful in any way?
Do you think it would ever be appropriate to have a class where teens listen to popular music and analyze it for its the messages, or is that stepping into, is that going over the line and actually promoting, or is that a danger in youth?
Honestly, that could probably go either way, but considering this school, I would hopefully think that would be something to consider, because since we are raised with a Christian foundation, then hopefully they'll be able to look at it and laugh, because now that's how I look at this music. Whenever I listen to it, I start laughing. That's so stupid.
My last question, is there any redeeming qualities that you have found in listening to popular music?
I found specifically that how not to live. This is how I should, I want to avoid this. Since I'm a musician, I've been trained and I have been introduced to what is beautiful and what is good music. And now that I look at popular music with a musician's perspective, I see this is not beautiful, so hence this is a way, it could be a good way in which it shows me I should not listen to this, I do not want to partake in this life.
Very good, Ernest. I did have just a couple of tiny things. I kept waiting for the first part of your speech for you to, even though I came here to agree with you, I wanted to play the devil's advocate. Okay, well, prove it to me with the research. And I think the only research that you mentioned had to do with schizophrenics, and that's aberrant behavior. And I know we're probably going to leave out research into tonight. Did you actually find some research that proves scientifically, like brain studies, that music has a direct impact on behavior?
On behavior?
Well, right, because behavior is a reflection of your morals, your choices,
Yes.
right? So,
It's
did you?
very hard to find research about that, saying that music directly affects behavior, because there's so many other aspects that go into it. But one of my points was that music is so prevalent, therefore it is an aspect, it is a huge aspect. But I found that some music preferences that adolescents have will correlate to some certain types of behavior. For example, heavy metal music has been shown to the adolescents to listen. That adolescents who listen to heavy metal music also experience very aggressive, even suicidal thoughts and antisocial behavior. And people who listen to rap or hip-hop music, it's been shown to
friend and mentor, Andrew Keller. Andrew Keller has been here and been a great addition to Annapolis in 7th grade. He has shown leadership and humility in his roles playing basketball and football. Andrew plans on beginning his college career at Coastal Bend in Depot, Texas. And he will be discussing with you the conflict of Cochlear implants. Please help me welcome Andrew Keller.
Living in South Texas, everybody enjoys a cold dip in the pool. Now, imagine you jump off the diving board and dive into the pool water. As you go under, you hear the splash, then silence, and then the inaudible voice breaking through the water. When you start floating to the surface, the voices are still inaudible, but they get loud and clear. When you start floating to the surface, the voices become louder and louder. Soon, you reach the top, and the voices are loud and clear. You can hear the people talking, the children laughing, and the music blaring in the background. In my world, I dive into the pool. I hear the splash. The voices are inaudible, but as my head reaches the surface, they are still hard to understand. This is a world of someone who is hearing impaired. A world where they are underwater for most of their life. A life where they are drowning in silence and hearing nothing but the sound of their own thoughts. A world where the hearing impaired people are lost and enclosed in a world dominated by vocal communication. However, hearing impaired people no longer have to live in silence, as the invention of cochlear implants and hearing aids have been developed. These inventions are amazing because they provide an opportunity for the deaf people to hear sounds. But these two devices are different. To clarify, a hearing aid amplifies sounds, while a cochlear implant transforms speech and other sounds into electrical energy that is used to simulate surviving auditory nerve fibers in the inner ear. A hearing aid is like a cane that allows the elderly to walk, and a cochlear implant is a prosthetic leg that allows the elderly to walk. Cochlear implants are going to be the main focus in this thesis. What is a cochlear implant? A cochlear implant is a small device that helps to provide a sense of sound to a person who is profoundly deaf or severely hard of hearing. The device is designed to produce useful hearing sensations to a person with severe to profound nerve damage by electrically stimulating nerves inside the inner ear. With the implant, the patient is given the opportunity to hear such sounds such as the garbage truck picking up the trash, or football pads clashing and people yelling, "Touchdown!" As a hearing community, you probably see cochlear implants as something that is not dangerous. If someone asked you, would you be fine with a deaf person receiving cochlear implants? You would probably answer yes, because the implants don't seem dangerous, but it's a simple device that helps the deaf to hear. You would encourage the implant because you would want the best for anybody. However, not everyone sees cochlear implants as a benefit. The invention and the use of such technology has caused a division between two groups of people, the hearing community and the deaf community. The hearing community understands deafness as a problem that needs to be fixed, and so they believe the cochlear implant benefit the hearing impaired. On the other hand, the deaf community, they accept their deafness as an identity and not a disability. Therefore, the deaf community is a big protester to the use of the implant. Before I move on, let me give you an insight into the deaf community. This proud community has two definitions for the word deaf. They are capital D deaf and lowercase d. Lowercase d deaf refers to who you are, and capital D deaf refers to what you are. Here's a better definition from Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. Deaf with the lowercase d is usually an audiological description of a person's hearing level, and deaf with an uppercase d refers to deaf adult and children who share the use of American Sign Language and deaf culture while common value, rules for behavior, traditions, and views of themselves and others. To be a member of this community, you have to be capital E deaf. Capital E deaf is your identity that marks your membership into this community. Now that you know a bit about the deaf community, you can see why they don't like implants. This community rejects the implants because they are dangerous, useless, and cultural threat. The thesis I will defend is that the implant is a device designed to help the hearing impaired hear, not to threaten the person's identity or the deaf community. Like all communities, the deaf community is proud of their culture. They use their own language, which is American Sign Language, ASL for short. This is their primary mode of communication. The community accommodates their lifestyle around their deafness. They feel that cochlear implants are a way for the hearing community to mock them of their deafness. They despise cochlear implants and feel that anyone who uses them or hearing aids is a traitor. As a result, they exclude the person from their community. As I mentioned before, a cochlear implant is a device designed to assist the deaf person with their hearing, but they are not for everyone. The process to receive them may not be appropriate for most people, especially the deaf people. The device consists of two parts, an external piece and an internal piece that is surgically placed under the skin. An argument is that the risk that comes with the surgery is far too dangerous for a device that may not work properly. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA, lists some of the risks during the procedure. Of course, a common risk would be the use of anesthesia. In addition, other problems would be fluid leaks, infection, blood collection, dizziness, numbness, and tinnitus, which is the ringing in your ear. Another risk that has caused much controversy is the risk of damaging to the facial nerve. In the surgical process, an incision is made behind the ear. Inside the ear, a facial nerve runs across it, and if it is damaged, then the patient could experience paralysis. Another potential risk is that the patient does not have improvement in his hearing. Cochlear implants are not 100% guaranteed to work, and so the deaf community argue that they are not worth the risk of the surgery simply because of the unreliability. Throughout this speech, I have been mentioning the deaf community. Why do they have a culture of their own? The Center for Advanced Research on Language at the University of Minnesota defines culture as the shared patterns of behavior and interaction, cognitive construct, and effective understanding that are learned through a process of socialization. The deaf community is a culture because they have their own lifestyle. They are a community that is proud of their culture's history, literature, and heritage. Just like the hearing community uses English as its language, the deaf community uses American Sign Language. Like I mentioned before, cochlear implants have caused a division between the hearing community and the deaf community. A factor that plays into this division between both communities is the concern that deaf children are being forced to be fixed. The community argues that deaf people don't need cochlear implants because they are not necessary. They are not necessary because a person can live a happy life without them, and they do not help improve the lifestyle of the patient. In the case with deaf children, they are being forced into the hearing world by their hearing parents. They are forced to live their life without having a say in the decision for receiving cochlear implants. Moreover, how should Christians respond to the cochlear implants? The deaf community argues that Christians should not support them. Why? Because God commands us to not alter our image. The deaf community argues that cochlear implants changes God's creation. So, with changing God's creation and children being forced to be fixed, cochlear implants are destructive devices that don't benefit the child. As a Christian, I believe people should be able to live a desirable lifestyle. If the deaf community wishes to live their life in silence, I can respect that. Hearing parents are not fixing their child because they are broken, but helping them to improve their hearing. Growing up, we are taught to help others with their needs. As Christians, this is what God tells us to do in Philippians 2:4. Let each of you not only look to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. The deaf community does not understand that the hearing community is only trying to help those who desire to hear. I believe cochlear implants are devices that allow the patient to hear God's message. Of course, deaf people can always read the Bible, but is it not better to hear the words from a church leader? Hearing is essential to living in a hearing-dominated world. Here's an interesting fact. Remember when I said that some members of the deaf community are against the use of cochlear implants? Well, there are also people in the hearing community that believe cochlear implants should not be used. If you are one of those people, ask yourself this. Would you want your child to live in a silent world? Would you let your child live inside her mind and have no mode of communicating with other people? Yes, there is ASL, but not everyone knows this language. A solution to the problem is to combine both cochlear implants and ASL. Let the child receive the implant, but also teach them ASL. This way, the child or adult can have two modes of communication. ASL is a great way to help create a strong bond between the child and its parents. In addition, the implant will help to seal the gap that separates them. This way, the relationship can be strong and their lives will be easier. ASL is a great language and people should learn it, but this language will suffer in a hearing-dominated world. Cochlear implants are beneficial because deaf people can live an easier life when they are able to hear. I believe the deaf community is over-exaggerating their fears of the risks that come with the surgical procedure. They are not looking at the fact concerning the severity of the risk. Not everyone who is deaf is eligible for the cochlear implant. For the patient to qualify for the implant surgery, the patient has to pass the criteria. The University of Miami School of Medicine has two lists of criteria for adults and children. For adults, they have to receive minimal benefit from hearing aids and be healthy enough to undergo surgery. For children, they have to be between the ages of 12 months and 17 years and have severe to profound deafness. Patients who qualify for cochlear implants must have either been losing their hearing or have already lost it, since there is a risk that they can lose their hearing during surgery. I believe that if the patient is losing his hearing, why not lose it trying to do something that can improve it? In other words, the patient is already losing his hearing, so why not take this opportunity to try and save it? If it works, great. But if it does not, then at least the family can say they tried. What if the family didn't try the implant? When the child eventually loses his hearing, will not the parents experience regret of not taking that chance? Also, this risk is just the same as others in reparative surgeries. I mentioned a list provided by the FDA mentioning the risks that come with the surgical implant. One of them was the danger of paralyzing the child. According to Washington University physicians of the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, they say that their percentage of their patients is less than 1%. This number shows that there are not many cases where the patient experiences paralysis. ENT, ears, nose, and throat, today report that facial nerve injury is almost non-existent, but there is facial nerve stimulation caused by the device. However, this problem can easily be solved by turning off one or two electrodes without damaging the ear. All in all, cochlear implants may be unreliable, but it is on a rare occasion they end up not working to full capacity. Imagine a group of people who all share the same language. Every person in the group is deaf and they use American Sign Language as the primary mode of communication. Now, imagine if one person decides to receive a pair of cochlear implants and begin to use spoken language as his new primary mode of communication. When the group finds this out, they reject him and begin to ignore him simply because he uses a new language different from the rest. The problem with the deaf community is they shame people who want and receive cochlear implants. They make the recipient feel ashamed of themselves. The community needs to realize that the person gets cochlear implants to hear. He is still going to use ASL to communicate with other deaf people. Another controversial problem is that the deaf community assumes the parent are forcing their child to be fixed. The parent is not fixing the child so that he can be successful in a hearing-dominated world. God does not want us to alter his creation. However, healing people with cochlear implants isn't, because Jesus himself healed people who were deaf. Mark 7:32-35 says, "And they brought to him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment. And they begged him to lay his hand on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears, and after spitting, touched his tongue. And looking up to the heaven, he sighed and said to them, Ephphatha, that is, be open. And his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly." Jesus never rejected people who seek his healing. When families brought to him a member that had an ailment, he blessed them and healed them. Jesus never accused them of changing God's nature or not being satisfied with it. You see, cochlear implants do not change his creation, but give the person an opportunity to achieve something they will never have without the assistance. Doesn't Jesus say in 1 Corinthians 11:1, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ"? If we are to be like Jesus, then why not help our brothers and sisters to achieve something they aren't able to do alone? When I was 4 years old, my ear doctor told my parents that I had a moderate hearing loss. He said that I would not be able to hear again. My parents were worried. They were afraid that I would have to live my life without hearing anything. However, with the help of a Driscoll Children's Hospital, they were exposed to a solution to my problem. They were offered the opportunity to let me receive hearing aids. Honestly, I can say this decision was the best one they ever made for me. Hearing aids have made an impact in my life, and they have only been positive things for me. Hearing aids and cochlear implants are two different hearing devices. But think about it. If fixed implants are going to have a horrible life, this is not true. I had many opportunities to be bullied, but this has not happened. In fact, children receiving cochlear implants at a young age are better off because they will grow accustomed to them and have an easier transition. Cochlear implants are a device that helps people to hear. They were not designed to mock the deaf, but rather help those who desire a life in the hearing world. If I am in a position where my child is deaf and qualifies for cochlear implants, I would definitely let him receive them. I want my child to hear the birds sing, the rain hit the roof, and the swish sound of a basketball going through the net. Now that we know about cochlear implants, it is our turn to help a hearing impaired person. If you know someone who is hearing impaired and wants a cochlear implant, but is either being ashamed or is ashamed by other people, go and help them make the decision that can change their life forever. Thank you.
However, your whole thesis rests on the supposition that we believe that your evaluation of the deaf community as hostile to this is true. And you didn't give us any statistical reason for us to believe that, or any prove to me now, since it's not here, why you believe that. Is that from interviewing people, or is there research, or did you look at editorials, or why do you say that they have this hostile attitude?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Why do you say that the deaf community has a hostile attitude? Because I don't see that you proved that anywhere. So, why do you think that?
I think so because they are, like us, we are proud of our community. And so they are proud of it, and they're afraid of losing it.
I don't mean like, why do they have that attitude? I mean, how do you know that they have that attitude?
Because they are, like I know that I talked to a hearing aid specialist this past summer, and she said that they were afraid of losing it. This is where I got the idea of cochlear implant, because they were afraid, they opposed it because they were afraid of them, that it would make their community extinct, and that the American Sign Language will die, and it will go away because of this prevention.
Okay, thank you.
Great topic. I enjoyed it very much. I applaud you for your own courage in overcoming these things in your own life. And I have a question. Would you have been able to get up here and deliver your speech today had you not received the hearing aids that your parents, do you think, in your opinion, that would have, what you're doing now would have been possible for you?
I don't think so, because it's just, if without hearing aids, I'd probably be hearing nothing. So my confidence level wasn't high. And it's just, because just you guys here, and y'all don't, most of you, majority of you don't know American Sign Language. So it'd be a little harder. And so that without the hearing aid, I don't think I would have been able, I wouldn't be up here right now.
So you're living proof that the hearing aid solution has opened doors for you that would have been closed to you.
Definitely.
Do you see hearing loss, deafness as a disability?
Yes, sir, I do. Because the definition for disability is something that is like abnormal, and so something that's like, because every human is born with 5 senses of hearing, and so disability is referring to as something that's not normal, so the hearing, so when they don't have hearing, then that's a disability.
How, and this gets to the question that Mrs. Lyons posed to you, how prevalent or how widespread do you think the opposition to cochlear implants is in the deaf community?
Like worldwide, or?
I would just say, if you're looking at the deaf community, let's just say in maybe worldwide, sure, or in your research, how prevalent, is that a majority view among people who are deaf, or is it a strong minority, or is it a weak minority?
In my research, I found that, I read that in the beginning when the implants were first invented, it was a huge controversial and like a lot. But as the years passed, more people, more deaf in the deaf community have started to accept it. So like the group of the opposers are starting to grow smaller.
Thank you.
I think they took all my questions.
Do you know what, I'm really curious, what percentage of deaf people actually do qualify for cochlear implants? Is it 5%, 75%? I mean, do you know what it is?
I'm not quite sure. I didn't cover it. But I want to say it's about 45%.
Andrew, I had one point of clarification. You referred in your speech to, you were making the case that cochlear implants aren't changing nature, or that it's just helping somebody be able to hear. Do you remember that argument or that
yes.
statement? I guess I was not clear about why it's wrong to change nature, right? Or why you were concerned about that argument, making that argument. Do you understand my question? Technology alters nature all the time, right? We can't go 60 miles an hour without the help of, a car. right? And so that's altering nature or our abilities, but I don't think anyone argues that that's a, So I'm just curious why you felt like that was an important argument to make, that it's not changing nature, but it's assisting somebody.
Because we are in a Christian school, and so could be an argument. If one of you were to meet somebody from the deaf community who opposes them, they could possibly use this argument, and so now you are able to just say, not changing nature in your ability.
But is it not changing nature, or is it changing nature and it's a good thing? In other words, the argument might be not necessarily that they're not, that we're not changing nature. We admit we're changing nature, but we're arguing that this is a very good thing to do. I don't know. I'm curious why you didn't make that argument.
Could you repeat your question?
It's a bad question, I'm sorry.
Andrew, I'd like to push back a little bit, and this is, obviously you're speaking to a hearing community, and so we've had to take your word for what you've learned and discovered about what the deaf community thinks and feels surrounding these issues and surrounding what it means to have a deaf community. Can you describe to us a little bit in greater detail what a capital D deaf community looks like? Is that like its own little micro society with their own schools, with their own, what does that mean to be a part of the capital D deaf community?
That means you don't use hearing aids or cochlear implants, and that you use American Sign Language, and you don't use vocal communication, and that you just accept your deafness as an identity, and you don't say, oh, well, I'm deaf, so I need to fix it. You accept it and embrace it, and so that's what makes you a member.
So do the members of who consider themselves now you've used this metaphor, this analogy of the capital D versus the lowercase d. Did you come up with that, or is that sort of a common description in terms of describing different philosophies about deafness?
I have a little assistance with that analogy,
Do you think, is there merit to this idea that members of the capital D deaf community run the risk of losing a very rich culture in which they could be accepted regardless of whether or not they can hear anything? Because it seems to me like that's probably getting closer to the heart of the tension, is that these members of this community feel like we're valuable as we are, even unable to hear. We don't want to lose that sense of value. Can you speak into that a little bit more?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, it seems like that could be a valid point, that there's a culture here that will be lost. Do you agree or disagree that there's a culture that would be lost?
I have to disagree with that, because culture, it's been here for a long time. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, because there are going to be people who oppose the idea that come to help people with their deafness.
Can a cochlear implant work on somebody who's completely deaf? Or do you have to have some hearing ability for it to work?
It can work on both. It can work on people who are completely deaf, and then it can work on people who, are losing hearing. So to determine that, they go through numerous tests, just to see, if their hearing is losing it, and eventually, and the doctors confirm that they're going to eventually lose their hearing, then they can qualify for cochlear.
So have we solved, does the cochlear implant, can it eradicate deafness to a large extent in our world?
It doesn't fix it. It just helps people. It gives that opportunity. Like, it doesn't completely heal deafness, because when they take it off, they're still deaf. So it just helps them, it's kind of like an assistant, an aid to help them do something they cannot do.
That's astounding, I think. That's an amazing piece of technology. Thank you.
All right, turn it over to the audience.
Sorry. Okay, so kind of piggybacking off of what Mr. Hansen said, did you look into any other forms of technology that capital D deaf societies or cultures use, like texting and other forms of communication? Did you look into that at all?
Yes, they use texting, and they can also argue that, but it's just, people want to hear, so that's what they do.
Yeah, it's the explicit hearing. Okay, I was just curious.
Are cochlear implants waterproof?
Yes, they are. They recently invented them, so.
Mine's question's longer, sorry. So, Andrew, but just to clarify for everyone else, I took sign language at college and then I've taught it for 3 years. So, I want to clarify something, not necessarily to help you, but so everybody understands, right? Yes, the deaf community does say little d, big D, and they classify themselves as the big D. That's the deaf community, and you gave the sources, the Galadon, which is the first deaf university. So that's his source, and so that's true. Second is, when I was learning sign language, I had to go and speak with deaf people, and I'll admit, and so Andrew, you probably might agree, is that we may not know much about the deaf community because it's very hard for the deaf community and speaking community to come together, right? And so, they have these things, coffee talk or whatever, deaf chat at Starbucks once a month, and I would go to that and sign with them, talk with them, right? And so these conversations would come up, mainly just like me attending and them having to write or fingerspell, right? But because I didn't know enough. But they very much, there's so many controversial issues within the deaf community, not just this, but also, do we sign? Do we learn to lip read? Do we, right? So I'm really glad that you chose this one, obviously, but so all of that aside, my question is, you talked about how, well, there's a big issue here with the language of a culture, right? Okay, majority of us speak English. Some of us may have learned Spanish or some other language first, but probably English for most of us, right? So there's a bunch of cultural and psychological and education and linguistic studies that talk about the power of language, right? We've heard from other people, and the danger of taking that language away. So in regards to that, the danger of taking a language away from a culture, right? What would you suggest that Annapolis does or universities do, and especially as Christians, if we need to reach out to these people and help them with the gospel, right? That was one of your points. What would you suggest that we should do at Annapolis, and universities maybe where you're headed to, right? Should do to reach out to the deaf community too and involve them in things that...
Well, first of all, we could, right now, as a school and community, we could look and research if there's any members of the deaf community within Corpus, and we could just try and communicate with them. With the communications, we can also try to an opportunity to try to teach American, offer courses in American Sign Language here at Annapolis, so that we all can understand it. And let it in the classes, just make them available for parents and adults, just make separate classes. So that way, whenever we see a deaf person approach it, we are able to interact with them. And another thing is, when you see meet a deaf person or anybody, just make sure, they like to lip read, so that's another thing. Whenever you meet one, always remember that. Make sure that your lips are clear and that they can read it. Don't talk too fast, because they can't understand fast. Just making sure that it's clear.
I have a question for you.
sister's brother-in-law is an ENT guy who was doing cochlear implants in San Antonio. And from what I understand, even though they're FDA approved, they are not usually funded in any insurance groups. Did you find any place that was a resource for them for deaf people to be able to afford cochlear implants? Because they're several tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes, they are expensive. In my research on the FDA, on the list, with the same website that I found for the FDA, they also list that there are several health insurance, or medical insurance that help pay either portion, majority of the portion, or all of it.
As someone who uses hearing aids, have you ever experienced discrimination from the deaf community for using assistive devices?
I have not, but like I'm pretty sure, I haven't, like with me hearing aids, I think I probably will, but it's just, that's what they feel, and so I just, let them, I can accept the fact, and I'll accept it.
One final question. When I was in grad school, I had to design. One of my projects that I was given in seminary was to actually design a local church-based outreach program to the deaf community with a big need. And so the statistics I'm aware of, everything you said, I had been aware of. And what concerned me though, because I can't speak ASL, is how will the deaf culture respond to stories like the one you shared about Jesus healing a deaf person? Would they see Jesus in the wrong? Or will that pose challenges to us trying to evangelize to the deaf community? Your thoughts?
I think they'll believe in Jesus, but I think they'll argue that Jesus is Jesus, and we can never be like him, so that we can't. So if we can't heal deafness, and we can't heal it, then why do this?
Okay, so they would probably make a distinction between deafness with assistive devices and complete miraculous healing.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, judges. Thank you, students, for your questions. Thank you, everybody.
Well done, all three of you. Thank you, Kelsey, Ernest-Reed, and Andrew, for your hard work, your dedication, in putting together your thesis presentations today. Let's give them another round. Six down, 3 to go. I'll see you all in the same place, same time tomorrow. Yours best.